Whenever there is a bank robbery, the bank manager tries to protect the vault first. Same with your body. Initial response to any injury is directed at maintaining the vital organs. This is the main concept behind metabolic response to trauma. Sometimes there can be an overreaction, for example, if the authority decides to blow up the whole bank to kill the robber. That is why sometimes a non-fatal injury can cause a fatal outcome. Hello and welcome to the Scalpel Speaks. In this video, we will discuss these metabolic derangements. Hope at the end of the episode you might have a clear idea about the topic. Keep in mind that these responses occur in any kind of injury, including surgery. In the year 1932, Cuthbertson coined the term stress response, which defines a series of events produced by cytokines, neural and hormonal responses that help to defend the body against trauma and promotes healing. In this context, we would like to explain two important terms briefly, SIRS and MODS. The term systemic inflammatory response syndrome is used to describe the body's response to infectious and non-infectious causes and consists two or more of the following: hypothermia or hypothermia, leukocytosis or leukopenia, tachycardia and tachypnea. And when the inflammatory response impairs function of organs or organ systems, the term multiple organ dysfunction syndrome is used. Let's start with those famous two words, ebb and flow phase. Cuthbertson coined these two terms in 1942. Aller et al. Later renamed them as ischemia reperfusion phenotype, leukocytic phenotype, and angiogenic phenotype. The first, or ebb phase, is basically body's battery saver mode. This is characterized by release of catecholamines and vasoactive hormones. Cardiac output is elevated by increase in heart rate and cardiac contractility. Peripheral and spastic vasoconstriction occurs, and extravascular fluids are mobilized to maintain blood volume. The respiratory rate is also increased, and this increase, in concert with the hemodynamic changes, drives maximum oxygen delivery. The blood glucose level is also elevated through a complex and tissue-specific insulin resistance pathway. The maintenance of blood glucose levels supports the obligate glucose metabolizing tissues such as brain, bone marrow, erythrocytes, granulation tissue, and the immune system. Free fatty acids are mobilized by the catabolic hormones and become the main source of energy for peripheral tissues. Stored hepatic glycogen is limited and may be depleted within 1 day. In the later stages, it may be characterized particularly by great increase in the potassium content of the blood and tissue fluids. An increase in creatinine is also been noted. As shock develops, nitrogen retention in blood occurs. Any wound contains more than their normal amount of fluid after trauma. This increase in water content brings corresponding influx of electrolytes. It is found that potassium and calcium are increased and sodium and chloride are decreased in comparison with the blood serum. As a result of the stasis in the vessels, there is an accumulation of CO2 and incomplete products of oxidation, apparent lessening of hemorrhage and pain. Of all changes produced, the tissue asphyxia is probably the most dangerous to life. Anemia, anoxia, loss of previous body heat, fatigue and dehydration are other features. It was found that after injury, there might be either a relative or absolute anuria, occasionally lasting for 24 hours. It was found that this change in metabolic rate might precede the well-marked fall in blood pressure. After the period of depressed metabolism, the output slowly and often irregularly rises. Now, there are some things that are dry. As far as the topics on medical sciences go, this one is one of the dry ones. But you have to chew on these topics to have a foundation for clinically important subjects. So let me offer you a glass of water to help you swallow. As the catabolic or flow phase is established, the metabolic emphasis is on the provision of substrate for healing. Basically, the body goes turbo mode in energy spending. The basal metabolic rate is elevated, and thereafter the patient catabolizes muscle to make glucose. Burkhan and colleagues found an almost 80% rise in catabolism after skeletal trauma, and Kian and associates have reported elevations as high as 103% in burn patients. The total nitrogen balance becomes negative. Some of the earlier changes of the ebb phase may be reversed. For example, a diuresis may occur or the heart rate may slow. It occurs after the resuscitation from a state of shock, which leads to an increased metabolic turnover, activation of the innate immune system, and induction of the hepatic acute phase response. The hypercatabolic condition leads to a significantly increased oxygen consumption and energy expenditure. The state of hypercatabolism has been associated with severe complications after major trauma, related to increased catecholamine production, hyperglycemia, hyperproteinemia, and immune suppression. The ebb phase corresponds to the ischemia reperfusion phenotype, is relatively brief, spanning less than 12 hours in most severely injured patients and some extreme cases up to 24 hours. Flow phase, synonymous to leukocytic phenotype, is when there is a sustained hypermetabolism lasts for at least 7 days and in many severely injured patients for up to 3 weeks and longer. The term angiogenic phenotype is defined as the late or endocrine phase of systemic response to injury. This phase is characterized by a return of oxidative metabolism, favoring angiogenesis in damaged tissues and organs. This process creates a capillary bed that facilitates tissue repair and regeneration. Similar injuries to different body regions can produce dramatic differences in metabolic requirements. 2 injuries in particular are worth special mention because of their notable metabolic consequences. The first is injury caused by head trauma. When brain injury is superimposed on multi-system trauma, the risk of death more than doubles due to systemic consequences of deranged metabolism. In addition, interventions like steroids, systemic dehydration, muscle paralysis, hyperventilation, hypothermia, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, and barbiturate coma are designed to delay these self-destructing metabolic changes. The second injury is fat embolism syndrome, seen particularly after long bone fractures. Fatty acid and triglyceride-rich fat globules enter venous sinusoids at the fracture site. These fat droplets migrate to the lungs, where they are converted by pulmonary lipase to free fatty acids, which can damage the pulmonary microvasculature. In addition, platelets are activated, aggregate, and attach to the fat droplets, a process that may lead to a consumptive coagulopathy. We can't forget our dear friend liver. After trauma, the portal blood flow may greatly be reduced and its oxygen saturation may fall. Considerable hypoxic damage may therefore ensue if reduced flow persists for long. Urea production may diminish and amino acids increase in blood and liver. Lactate may also accumulate and high energy phosphate compounds may be depleted. The manufacture of fibrinogen and prostaglandin may be reduced. Now we will shift our focus to mediators of these responses. First, neuroendocrine responses. It starts with the upregulation of the sympathoadrenal axis, which generates high plasma concentrations of epinephrine, norepinephrine, vasopressin, and dopamine. These substances directly affect blood glucose level and also produce inhibition of glucose uptake by tissues, which stimulates glucagon secretion. Sympathetic activity promotes lipolysis within adipose tissues, which begins to provide an energy source for gluconeogenesis. Gluconeogenesis is again stimulated by glucagon. The hypothalamic pituitary axis is stimulated at the same time as the sympathetic nervous system after trauma. The hypothalamus secretes CRH, the pituitary then releases adrenocorticotropic hormone, which stimulates the adrenal cortex to secrete glucocorticoid hormones such as cortisol. Epinephrine and cortisol promotes muscle breakdown, protein catabolism, and amino acid release. ADH promotes reabsorption of water and peripheral vasoconstriction. Renin-angiotensin causes vasoconstrictions and releases aldosterone, which further conserves sodium and depletes potassium. Growth hormone also secretes in anabolic phase and promotes protein synthesis and ketogenesis. Insulin release reduces in first hours, but later it increases during the anabolic phase. Moving on to the lipid-derived moderators. Thromboxane A2 accentuates platelet aggregation. Prostacyclin may have a role in pulmonary hypoxic vasoconstriction and systemic vasodilatation. Lipoxygenase products affect the permeability of the pulmonary vascular bed. Next is cytokines. These are protein mediators released by monocyte, lymphocytes, macrophages. The most important cytokines in trauma are tumor necrosis factor, the interleukin 1, 2, 6 and 8, interferons, various growth factors such as granulocyte macrophage colony stimulating factor and platelet-derived growth factors. They enhance immune cell function and are responsible for the systemic effects of inflammation such as sepsis, fever, leukocytosis, hypotension, delayed gastric emptying and malaise. Last but not the least is polymorphonuclear neutrophil. Catecholamines and glucocorticoids marginalize peripheral polymorphonuclear neutrophils and recruit them from the bone marrow. Lipids and cytokines then prime these cells for enhanced superoxide anion release and sequestration in end organs. Capillary endothelial integrity is disrupted, leading to the formation of edema. Defects in oxygen delivery causes hypoxic cellular injury. This derangement leads to the clinical entity of multiple organ failure. Before going into the management, we will briefly touch 3 clinical situations which are derived from these hyperinflammatory and thrombogenic changes. One is acute respiratory distress syndrome or ARDS, stress gastritis and deep vein thrombosis. Now, to modulate this metabolic response to trauma, our weapon is nutritional therapy. Now, we will have a detailed episode on nutrition down the line. However, here is a brief description. Beware, this might get a bit dry. Carbohydrates, at least 100 grams per day needed to prevent ketosis. Carbohydrate intake during stress should be between 30 to 40% of the total calories, and glucose intake should not exceed 5 mg per kg per minute. Fat provides 20 to 35% of total calories. Maximum recommendation for intravenous lipid infusion is 1 to 1.5 gram per kg per day. We have to monitor the triglyceride level to ensure the adequate lipid clearance. Protein requirements range from 1.2 to 2 gram per kg per day during stress. It comprises also of 20 to 30% of total calories during stress. The anabolic hormones such as growth hormone, IGF-1 or insulin, they promote a positive nitrogen balance. Glutamine is an immunoprotein which reduces infectious complications, improves the nitrogen balance and shortens the hospital stay. Oral glutamine has a bactericidal effect. Now, the different amino acids such as leucine, isoleucine and valine inhibit protein catabolism in skeletal muscle. Arginine stimulates growth factor and IGF-1, rate limiting substrate for nitric oxide production, promotes wound healing and immune function. Omega-3 polyunsaturated fatty acid, it decreases cytokine and prostaglandin production, so reduced hypermetabolism following injury. RNA is a dietary nucleotide which improves cell-mediated immunity. Growth hormone causes whole body synthesis rate to be increased. It decreases muscle amino acid efflux, decreased urea generation, improves wound healing and decreases infection. IGF-1 promotes wound healing. Insulin improves nitrogen balance during high dextrose administration. Now, the vitamins: vitamin A, wound healing and tissue repair. Vitamin C causes collagen synthesis and wound healing. Vitamin B group causes metabolic and carbohydrate utilization changes. Pyridoxine specifically is essential for protein synthesis. Zinc promotes wound healing, immune function and protein synthesis. Vitamin E is a potent antioxidant. Folic acid, iron and B12 are required for synthesis and replacement of red blood cells. Now, metabolic response to trauma is the reason why even after a perfect surgery, your patient doesn't start walking out of the hospital right away. So, you have to be a ruthless warrior in the operating room, but also a gentle healer in the ward. Now, metabolic response is a vast subject and the role of each mediator can be put down in its own video. However, we have tried to make an overview to cover as much as we could. We have provided our sources in the description. Hope you enjoyed. And don't forget to like, share and subscribe.